we're going to have a guest speaker, and you'll learn lots of information from her, and we'll also have some people to welcome you. So, housekeeping. Because we are recording and background noise is disturbing, if we could all keep ourselves muted, that would be great. And there will be opportunities to unmute later, but I will definitely tell you about that. If you have any questions, I'd appreciate it if you would put them in the chat while I'm presenting, and there will be individuals in the chat. And if at the end of my presentation, there are still questions remaining, I will answer those. We have a Spanish interpreter tonight, which is why I'm speaking a little slower than I normally talk, because we want to make sure that our Spanish-speaking attendees are able to follow along with the presentation. And so those are closed captioning is also available. And we also have 2 ASL interpreters with us tonight. And if you need the interpreters, you might want to pin them on your screen so that you can always see them. Okay, hopefully I didn't forget anything. So let's go ahead and to the next slide.
And Tracy, just before we do that,
Yes.
can one of my colleagues, can Emma just share that information about translation?
Absolutely, absolutely.
I don't know how to select that. Thanks.
Yes.
Buenas noches y gracias por acompañarnos esta noche, y solamente les quiero decir que tenemos interpretación simultánea al español y nuestro intérprete está en otro canal. Si ustedes quisieran escucharlo en la interpretación, acá abajito donde ven un círculo como si fuera una bolita, dice interpretación, ahí tienen que apretar y después irse al español y después bajar todo el volumen de inglés. Cualquier pregunta, por favor, déjenos un comentario, una preguntita en el chat y aquí vamos a estar para ayudarlos. Gracias. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Emma.
you. Okay, so now we are going to have some greetings from some special guests. The first of which is Rachel Bowman, who is the assistant principal at the Arlington Career Center. And Kathleen, if you can hit the arrow. Oh no, there was some animation.
Oh.
Well, I can
It's
welcome.
okay.
I
Yes.
can welcome everyone. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rachel Bowerman. I am one of the assistant principals at the Arlington Career Center, and I oversee and support our special education students there. And I am thrilled that we are able to work with NOVA to really heighten and enlighten our students with our dual enrollment projects here at APS within NOVA. And this evening is such a blessing for all of our families and students to be able to learn about how transition services work in leading them to early preparation for college and understanding how to acknowledge and advocate for themselves for the needs that they may have beyond high school, and giving them this early opportunity to practice and experience it, as well as understanding what NOVA's expectations are, really is that first step in really leading them along the path of post-secondary excellence. And so thank you everyone for coming tonight and learning, and I hope you get a lot from this session.
Thank you. And now we're going to have Miss Kathleen Odige, who is the Dean of Student Success at the Alexandria campus.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kathleen Odige. I am the Dean of Student Success at the Alexandria campus, and I'm here on behalf of our provost, Dr. Annette Hagray, who couldn't be with you today and sends her regrets. And what I can say to you is thank you for attending. You're about to get a wealth of information. And what I can tell you about a little bit about me, I've been with NOVA almost 20 years. And I started teaching here, and the programs and departments that I oversee are, we work and also work in tandem with is Tracy's group, which is Accommodations and Accessibility, and counseling, advising, tutoring, testing. So think academic support and student support services. That's what we do. So our purpose is to help you succeed while you come to our school. And when you stumble, we're there to assist you. If you stumble, or if you can imagine that you might have a problem, if you know you're not strong in math, or you're weak at writing, or you just need some fresh eyes, that's what our tutoring support's there for. And we also have coaching. So our sole purpose is to help you succeed, and we're excited to have you join us this evening. One or two reasons you may want to consider coming to our campus in particular is we're incredibly friendly and we're incredibly helpful. So that's why I think, don't tell anybody, but we're the best campus.
Yes, we are.
Right? Yes, we are. So, but even if you choose other campuses, let me tell you how friendly we are. We'll help you get there too. So welcome, have a good night. And if you need anything, feel free, Tracy, to share my information, and I'll be more than happy to follow up with the students or parents.
Okay, thank you so much, Kathleen.
Absolutely.
And last but certainly not least, my director, Crystal Edmead, who is the fearless director of our team, Accommodations and Accessibility Services.
Yes, hello. As everyone else who's spoken thus far, it is certainly a pleasure to be in a room. So I am, as Ms. Bell said, the Director of Accommodations of Accessibility Services. My name is Crystal Edmead. At NOVA, we are committed to ensuring that all students have an opportunity to pursue a college education. And part of staying true to this commitment involves speaking with students like yourself about what it means to transition from high school to college. Another part of staying true to our commitment involves helping parents to recognize that this transition is one that students must actively participate in to be the most successful in the college environment. It will always be important and necessary for students to be in the room and at the table when speaking with others about their challenges, accomplishments, and future desires. By attending this conference today, students, you have already taken one of several important steps in facilitating your transition to higher education. Today, in conversation with Ms. Bell and other presenters, you will have the unique opportunity to learn more, not just about our office as Accommodations and Accessibility Services, but also about what it means to start NOVA strong. We wish you well. We are here to assist you and support you as you continue along your journey. And we look forward to possibly seeing you around our NOVA campuses one day very soon. Thank you again and enjoy today's program.
Thank you, Crystal. Next slide. So we are now going to jump right into the presentation. And as has been stated, you might want to take some notes, although we are being recorded. There's a lot of information here, but it's all useful for students and parents to understand as students make their transition. Next slide. So here are some of the things we're going to talk about. I am going to give you some facts about NOVA in case you want to learn more about the institution. We are going to talk briefly about becoming a NOVA Nighthawk. That is our mascot, Ace the Nighthawk. I'm also going to talk to you about some of the things you need to be aware of as you transition from high school to college. And once you get here, understanding college accommodations. I'm going to share the accommodations application process with you. And students, definitely will be talking about some of your responsibilities once you come to NOVA from an accommodations perspective. So there are definitely things that students need to do for themselves. Lastly, I will share the myriad of campus resources and college resources, and then I'll offer some final thoughts. Next slide. So NOVA, I have heard it referred to as the Harvard on the Potomac. It is more than just a two-year institution. It's one of the largest community colleges in the US. It is the largest in Virginia in terms of public educational systems. We have about 80,000 students, and that keeps growing, along with 3,400 staff members to staff, faculty, and administrators to help serve those students. So everyone, as Kathleen said, can definitely find someone to help them with their questions. We are spread across Virginia in terms of our campuses. In addition to being at the Reston Center and having a fully online college, we have campuses at Alexandria, Annandale, Loudoun, Manassas, the medical education campus in Springfield, and a campus in Woodbridge. And as a student at NOVA, you can take your classes anywhere you want to, whether they're virtual or in person. And one of the things that I appreciate most about NOVA and have since I've been here is the fact that it is quite diverse. We have students from over 180 countries. So while walking the hallways, you are likely to hear multiple languages being spoken as students are around campus. And lastly, like I said, we have a lot to offer. We have over 100 degree programs and associate degrees and certificates. In addition to the distance learning, again, that you can get through NOVA Online, as well as a continuing education division through workforce development. So whatever you're looking for, we probably have it. Next slide.
Sorry about that. I'll be
That's
right.
okay.
Hopefully we haven't lost our subtitles. Whoa. I have all-
Okay,
Tracy,
One
just bear with me for one moment. Let me just
no
check
worries.
subtitles back.
So while we get our subtitles back, I just want to share a little bit more about myself. So I've been at NOVA for 10 years. I've worked at the Annandale campus, but mostly at the Alexandria campus. And one of the reasons I enjoy that campus so much is because of the diversity and the student population in terms of their student status. There are parents, there are workers, they're young, they're more seasoned. We see a lot of difference individuals at the Alexandria campus, and we are small and intimate. And so whenever there's a question from a faculty member, I can simply walk up the stairs and talk to them. And so it's been a wonderful experience to be at the Alexandria campus. Now let me tell you briefly about becoming a NOVA Nighthawk. Next slide. So there are 4 steps. And again, I'm not going to go over this in great detail. Hopefully you all are registered, whether it's dual enrollment or you're an incoming student. And you can see right there, the link at the top, there is a link to the orientation page, which has these particular steps on it. You do want to apply online for admissions and financial aid if that is something that you're going to need in terms of financial aid. That is your first step, because that's where you will get your NOVA student ID and you will start to get access to the tools that you need inside of MyNova. So you will need to set up the MFA, which stands for Multi-Factor Authentication, a security measure implemented by the Virginia Community College system to protect our network and all communications about students. So once you get that set up, and you register and pay for classes, then you will get access to your NOVA student email. And that is the only email that we are allowed to communicate with students on once they actually are enrolled and have paid for classes. So after that, step 2, you are going to want to go to our website and look up the direct enrollment and self-informed placement surveys. So you will get to determine by some mini assessments what level of English or math you are going to start at. And you can use things like AP scores, IB scores, other different measures. So the placement test is not the way that is no longer the way that we determine where students are going to start in English and math. You will be highly encouraged to complete a student orientation. There is an orientation called New to NOVA online, and I'll share more about that later, but that is something that I highly recommend because it will give you an overview of NOVA from the history of the college up down to how to register, how to access resources. So I encourage you to do that. And then finally, you want to register and pay for those classes. Next slide. So now let's get into the meat of this presentation, which is the transition from high school to college. Next slide. Which can be quite filled with a lot of change, right? So you're in high school and now you're going to be coming to college, and a lot of things are going to be different. You're going to have to think about many, many things. And so we want to give you a heads up on some of those things that you're going to be facing once you get to college. Even if it's not NOVA, you're still going to face a lot of things when you get to college. Next slide. So what are some of those common differences between high school and college? Well, first of all, high school is very structured. You have your A days and your B days, and you take certain classes during those days, and that's pretty much what you do for the entire year. You also have more instructional presence. I'm just going to turn myself off because that's distracting. You also tend to have more teachers in the classroom, right? In terms of an instructional assistant, as well as a main teacher. You are referred to as considered, let me say it that way, you're considered to be a child. And the parents is the one that's responsible for you. And so they can get your grades and the teacher can call them for parent conferences, right? Now, as far as your grades, they just might reflect effort. You showed up, and so you probably will get a grade, right? And the schools are the ones that typically manage the social and cultural activities. You know, you have your pep rallies and you have your football games, and all of that is put together by the school. And then you also have multiple people who are involved in the IEP and 504 planning process. Some of you may have been involved and some of you may not have been, but all of that is actually going to change. Where in college, you will have so much flexibility to determine what courses you're going to take, when you're going to take those courses, where you're going to take those courses, what time of day you're going to take those courses. I advise you to do it when you are at your most alert and your best. For me, that would be in the morning. Well, actually, no, it would be in the afternoon. You will be considered as an adult. And so there will be adult responsibilities, right? You're going to get your grades. They're going to be posted in Canvas or your NOVA student account. And the only way your parents would get them is if you shared those grades with them, or if they were, if you give them consent to access that information. So the professors will only be talking to you. They are under no obligation to return phone calls to parents or to communicate with parents. And so students, if you have questions, you are definitely highly recommended to go to your instructors and get those questions answered. And we have a lot of activities at the college and on each campus. There is a student life division. And so if you want to make NOVA a real college experience and not treat it as a commuter campus, then you are recommended to get involved in some of those campus activities and organizations. And so you, as the student, will be in control of your college existence. Next slide. So now let's move on to college accommodations. Next slide. Which are very different. Now, in the college setting, NOVA is committed to providing equal access. That is what college accommodations are about, equal access to its programs, facilities, and services for students with disabilities. And the college accommodations process is governed by different laws. One is Section 504 of the Voc Rehab Act, and the other is the American with Disabilities Act, which has amendments to it as well. And so it's really those laws that define the accommodations process and how it will flow, what students will be responsible for in that process, and the fact that NOVA must provide the accommodations. And I think that it's more than just providing, though. It's not just what the law says, but it's the spirit of the law too, because not everybody learns the same way and at the same pace, and everyone has the right to pursue higher education, and having the accommodations will help those students get that access. So one of the things that I do as an accommodations and accessibility services counselor is to work with you as the student to help you develop appropriate accommodations, and empower you to use those accommodations. So there's an entire process where I would review documentation to determine those reasonable accommodations, and it's all confidential. So in high school, you go to class and your teacher and everyone, all the adults and the staff members already know what accommodations you're going to be getting. But once you come to college, that's really your business. And if you want to share the accommodation letter with your professors, then you can do that. But you can also choose not to. And so this is where you're going to start developing those self-advocacy skills that are so important in this process. And we also give you certain guidelines. Everyone has a responsibility in this environment, faculty, staff, and students, to help you along the way. And it's really important that you are very knowledgeable about who you are and how you learn, because that's going to help the process in terms of determining your accommodations. Next slide. So let's talk about that IEP or 504 plan from high school versus what we at NOVA call a Memorandum of Accommodation, or an MOA. So you probably have been evaluated by your high school, or maybe some of you have private evaluations, but when you get evaluated by your school, they have to do that in order to determine what accommodations and modifications that you need as a student in high school. Now, let me define modification. So a modification, for example, would be, let's just say that you are in an English class, and the English class is tasked with reading 4 books for the year. Well, as a student with an accommodation, you may only have to read 2 or 3 of those books. So that's a modification. It is a definite change to the amount that you learn, to the way that you access your learning, and it's not something that happens at the college level. Okay. So in high school, your accommodations can be retroactive. So you can, go back, or you can hand in things later in the semester. You can redo tests. And also the teachers, once again, are aware of what's going on. All right. Whereas in college, you must come to my office or the college accommodations office. There's a counselor at each campus. You have to come and tell us that you have a disability, a diagnosis that affects the way that you learn, and you are seeking help for that diagnosis. And that's how you get the MOA, if you're qualified to get the MOA because of how you learn. So any assessments that you provide would have to be paid for by yourself or your family. NOVA does not offer the types of assessments or evaluations that students need to determine their supports in college. We do have a list of resources that we can provide, but students have to come and pay for that information themselves. And as I said before, there is no modification. Things can be equal. You will get equal access to your education, and the accommodations are never retroactive, which is why it's important for the student to apply as soon as possible so that they can have their MOA at the start of the semester. That's not to say that you can't apply in the middle of the semester and get an accommodation letter, because you can, but at that point, you can't go back and redo anything, any tests that you may not have done well on, any paper that you did not hand in. The accommodations would only cover academic tasks moving forward. And you, as the student, will have to inform your instructors about your accommodations. You do not need to disclose your disability. You just need to discuss what's on your MOA with each of your instructors to let them know what your needs are for their class. Next slide. So here are some common examples of academic accommodations. Maybe in the classroom, you might need advanced access to what the professor is going to talk about. Now, in the virtual environment, that information may be posted on Canvas, in which case we recommend that you go to Canvas, you access your classroom, and you look at the materials and you download them and you read over them before you get to class, so that once you get to class, you already have an idea of what's going to happen, and that may help you keep up and be able to listen to the lecture instead of worrying about taking notes. We also offer interpreter services, as you can see. Right now, during this event, if someone were deaf or hard of hearing, they certainly could have an interpreter in the classroom with them. And as we are recording this event, students can also record in the classroom using whatever device that's convenient for them. And sometimes you will encounter professors who say, oh no, we can't do that because this is intellectual property. Intellectual property is something that professor has created for themselves, published, and it's their own. But everything that the professors present in college belongs to the college. So you cannot be denied the right to record if that is on your accommodation letter. In terms of testing accommodations, some people may get additional time because maybe they process at a slower pace and they need more time to figure out what their answer is going to be, to sort of process the information. And some people need to test in a different location. In the classroom, you could hear pens tapping, you could hear people clearing their voices, chairs may be moving, papers could be flapping, and sometimes that's really distracting to students who need a quiet space. And so you would be allowed to test in what we call a reduced or minimal distraction environment. And lastly, there are some other accommodations that could be individual to the student and what their needs are. Things like getting their materials in a different format. Ebooks are really popular now. Some students really need to have the book read to them, and that is a possible accommodation. As well as some students with medical conditions, they actually may need to have food and water in the classroom where it's typically not allowed. But if they need it due to a medical condition or even during testing, they would be allowed to have it. Next slide. So a little bit more on accommodations. So the accommodations are individualized to the students. And I say that as an example, I've often worked with, or I have worked with siblings in the past, and they may have the same diagnosis, but they may not be affected in the same way. It gets really tricky when I meet with sibling A and we determine their accommodations, and then I might meet with sibling B later and we determine their accommodations, and then they go home and they compare notes, right, as siblings do. And maybe sibling A comes back and says, wait, but my brother or sister got that and I didn't. I want that too. But that is not possible. Those accommodations are based on the conversation that the counselor has with the student, the documentation that the student provides, and what's reasonable under the law. Like we talked about, those two laws that govern this accommodations process. So students should be aware of that. It is about what you need, not what you prefer or what someone else has because they have the same diagnosis. And so again, it's about access. Now, access is important, but the student also needs to bring something to the table because unfortunately, a student could have many accommodations and still not be successful, right? And that's where we encourage students to know themselves, to use the resources, and to do their best to make the most of their college education. So again, apply early and get your accommodations, and make sure that the accommodations are reasonable for the setting, for the course. They cannot fundamentally change the nature of a course. And as an example of that, I often say all students have to take a communications class for 95%, probably higher, of our degree programs. And let's say a student with a communication disability registers for public speaking as a communication class. Well, those two things don't seem to go together. The student would not be able to come to a counselor and say, I need to be exempt from public speaking in my public speaking class. That would be a fundamental alteration of that class. How would we handle that? One approach would be to determine if that public speaking class is the only communications class that is available to that student for their major. If it's not, we would recommend, why don't you take Intro to Communication? Why don't you take maybe group communication or something like multicultural communication? So there are other classes the student could be able to take. Another way to handle it could be perhaps the student, I guess it would depend on the severity of the communication disability, but perhaps the student could present to the professor alone to show that they know the material, or they could record themselves and show that to the class. So there are different ways that we think about handling accommodations based on the student's need. Next slide. Now, we provide a lot of things, but there are also things that we do not provide and we are not required to provide under the law. While we have tutors at the college, yes, every campus has some sort of academic services department where students can go to get free tutoring. We will not assign personal tutors to the students. Many students have asked about this, and the recommendation is you are welcome to find a personal tutor outside of the college, but when you seek tutoring at the college, you will be sharing those individuals with your peers. Again, we are not going to have weekly or bi-weekly conferences to discuss progress. That is not something that is required in higher education, and it really defeats the purpose of the student becoming more self-sufficient, of the student learning how to advocate for themselves, and just becoming more aware of themselves and stronger in their abilities. So that is not something that's going to happen. We're also, as I said before, we don't provide the diagnostic evaluations that students need in order to qualify for accommodations. And NOVA is an open college. And like I said, we're committed to providing accommodations to those who qualify, but we don't have classes that are just for students with disabilities, much like in high school where you have your small group classes for some courses, and maybe you take some of your classes in the general education setting, right? So you will be able to take any class that you want at the college. Open book and untimed exams is pretty unheard of as well. But there have been isolated incidents, but it's not something that we're required to do. Maybe some professors use it as a part of their academic freedom for their class, but you should not expect that on a regular basis. And if an individual needs a personal care attendant, for example, someone to actually be in the classroom with them, maybe they have a medical condition that requires some assistance, we are not required to provide that. Typically, students would come with an individual, and we have certain agreements that the student and the individual must follow to ensure that the academic experience in the classroom does not change for anyone else or that student. And we also don't provide individual assistance to get students around the campus. What I recommend, we are in May. Come to visit the campus. Go visit any campus that you're interested in taking classes at. You know, you're going to find that they all have very different personalities, right? And that's okay. So again, you can find whichever one fits for you. We hope you'll come to Alexandria though, because like I said, you know, we're intimate, we're small, and there's a friendly vibe there, and you can get the help that you need. Next slide. Previous slide. So what should you be doing right now to get accommodations at NOVA? Again, know thyself, okay? How do you function at 8 a.m. versus 3 p.m. if you are taking ADHD medication, right? Be able to talk with your counselor, your accommodations counselor, about what helps you in the classroom, what helps you during testing. How you learn best. Are you a visual learner? Are you more of a hands-on learner? That's important information for your accommodations counselor to help develop the accommodations that are going to be best for you. So again, just know how you're impacted by your diagnosis. The other important thing that's very important for students coming into college is that self-advocacy piece. It is so important to be able to verbalize your needs, to be able to interact with your instructor. for a question about something you heard in class, or maybe even a concern about your grade on an exam. Those are all things that students will be expected to take on once they come to the college setting. You really do need to speak for yourself, and parents. Just encourage the students to go talk to the individuals they need to talk to. Come talk to their accommodations counselor, go talk to their advisor, go talk to their professor. Again, everyone is here to help the students with those skills. And so the student definitely needs to start practicing them. And the other thing is technology. It is there's a lot of it. Let me just say that. So please familiarize yourself with it. And we actually do have technology courses for students. So once you get hooked into NOVA, you will start getting those emails. And if you need a refresher course on Zoom or Canvas, you can get one. Next slide. So now let's talk about the applications process. Next slide. So all students will need to apply online. We do have an online application system where you will complete a series of questions and tell us more about yourself. And then you also are going to upload documentation that gives us an idea of what your diagnosis is, what your functional limitations are. So what is it that you have a hard time doing because you have that diagnosis? And the documentation can recommend particular accommodations, but at the end of the day, again, that's an interactive process between the counselor and the student. So that IEP 504 plan that you have, you in school, you should really have an electronic copy of that yourself right now, okay? Because that is what you are going to need to upload to the system so that you can have a complete application and get started with the process. So once you do that, your application will go into a queue and it will get assigned to the appropriate campus, and that campus's accommodations counselor will review the documentation, your application, and they will contact you either to say we need more documentation or to say, hey, let's have a conversation about what accommodations you're eligible for in the classroom. Next slide. So what I want you to do is monitor your email. If you have put that personal email on the application, please monitor it. If you're already registered and paid for classes and you have your NOVA email, please monitor that as well. And another thing that most students don't typically think about, if you put a number on that application and we call you, it'd be really great to be able to leave a voicemail. So make sure that your voicemail is clear. Make sure you've actually got your voicemail set up to receive a message. That would be great. So when should you apply? As early as possible for the semester in which you plan to take classes. So we are in the summer semester, which will run from May to August. We have actually been getting applications months ago for the summer semester. But really you should be applying now. And for the fall, you really should be, once you graduate from high school, you do all your celebrating. I would say apply before you graduate high school and then do all your celebrating, and then know that once you come back, you will be likely entering the process to get your accommodations. But like I said, students can apply at any time during the semester, but just know that the accommodations will not be retroactive. Next slide. So I believe I already talked about this. That's what happens next, right? You're going to meet with the counselor, get your accommodations, talk with your professor, and most importantly, you are going to reach back out to your accommodations counselor if you have a problem. If we don't hear from you, we think everything's going great, and it could be, right? But if it's not going great and you need help solving a problem, you really should come to us so that we can help you with whatever issue that you have. Next slide. So what are some of your responsibilities in terms of being a student with Accommodations at NOVA? Next slide. Again, you will need to self-identify that you have a diagnosis and that you would like to receive accommodation. So complete that online application, upload that documentation, and then be aware that we are going to reach out to you for one of two reasons, like I said, to get more documentation or to have you come in for an intake. So please, again, get electronic copies of whatever you have in your special education file to upload. Please just upload what you have. We do not advocate for students going out to spend $3,000 on a neuropsych evaluation if what you have will be sufficient. And we won't know if it's sufficient until you submit it, right? And we will give you feedback on whether or not we can work with it or if we need more. Next slide. So we talked about the follow-up as well, okay? Please come and see us. That is the one thing that I find that students fall down on in terms of staying in contact with their assigned counselor. We are there for you to help you navigate the college environment, which again, you know, is going to be quite different. And you're going to have to do a whole lot of things different. And so it's okay that you don't know that when you come in the door, but at some point you will need to learn it. And we are your primary source of information. Next slide. So from an accommodations perspective, you'll be held to the same academic standard, right? So it goes back to what I said about the 4 English books versus the 2 or 3 English books. That would violate the English class and the nature of that course, right? So you are still going to be able to, or be required to, read the same number of books, take the same number of tests, have your test cover the same information, okay? And you will need to figure out how you're going to engage with the college. Are you going to get involved in some of those activities, right? Are you going to take advantage of the resources, the tutoring centers? We will work with you and your instructors, and we also work with training, right? Not just students, but faculty and staff, because we want everybody to be aware of the fact that NOVA provides accommodations and that professors really do need to implement them or contact the assigned counselor if they have difficulty with those accommodations and how to implement them for a student. Next slide. So let me give you some resources, again, of which there are plenty. Next slide. Academically, we have student support centers. You can walk into any campus and be seen by an advisor, or to go to enrollment services, or to go to financial aid. So all of these offices are there to help you. And it's better to come in person, but we do have virtual services. We have virtual advising through Zoom, through chat, and through email. But again, if you can come in and talk to someone, that's probably better based on your communication style as well. Be advised, though, that the sessions are 15 minutes to get you started so that you can get on your way. And then you can reach out to an advisor, you know, at a later point if you need more information, okay? One of the things that's really new to NOVA, a couple of things, the personal and financial services that are offered by NOVA. We have an Office of Wellness and Mental Health, and recently we started telehealth services. So all students, faculty, and staff have access to virtual counseling. And it is something that students are taking advantage of because we know the mental health crisis has exploded as a result of the pandemic. And NOVA wants to make sure that students are healthy from a holistic standpoint. It's very difficult to try and come to school if you have psychological pressures on you. So there is room for you to get help for that. And some people may have other types of concerns, financial concerns. We have a financial stability center where students can go. And if they qualify, get emergency loans, get assistance with applying for assistance with the government, with the local CSBs. There's free tax preparation and filing, and I've taken advantage of that. So that's definitely a perk. One other thing is we have food pantries. You know, food insecurity is another common issue in this day and age amongst many people, but certainly college students as well. If you are hungry and your stomach is rumbling, it's hard to focus in class. It's hard to get your homework done. So we have Nighthawk nests where students can stop in and get something. We also have where students, you know, depending on your need, can shop in our pantry through our student life and take away things that they need for their families. Next slide. More student support services include the library and testing centers. There are one of each on every campus. And like I said, the student life is very active across the college. Our particular student life department is awesome. And they have some great events like NOVA Day, where you can come out and just have fun, you know, spin the wheel, get some prizes. There's music, there's pottery, there's food. So when you see those events, try to attend them because it's going to be good for you in the end. And then based on the campus, there will be a variety of other support services. Academic coaching is available at Alexandria. So if you have difficulty with time management, with studying for a test, with reading for comprehension, academic coaching might be for you. So that is something that you can look into. But of course, we also have our writing centers, math labs, science labs, and places where you can go to print up fancy posters for your different classes at Tilt. And we also have a hosted program called College Steps, where students who may need a little bit more assistance in the college setting could get assigned a peer mentor. It is a hosted program. It is not a part of the Accommodations and Accessibility Services office, so students would have to pursue that on their own. Next slide. Final thoughts. Okay, next slide. So if you are receiving special education services now, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you're going to need them in college. Why? There's a higher level of thinking. There are more responsibilities. There are study groups. There are, you know, more exams, and the exams are not fill in the blank. You have to process information, synthesize it, and explain it, and that is very different than what you're probably used to right now. So apply for accommodations. Even if you decide not to use them, just apply, okay? So that you won't struggle, because the resources are there and students do not have to struggle unnecessarily. And lastly, again, it goes back to knowing yourself. We all learn differently and at a different pace. NOVA is designed to graduate students with 2-year degrees, but if you want to take 5 years to get your associates, that's perfectly fine. Just know and go at your own pace, and don't try to keep up with the Joneses, right? Because you may not process information like the Joneses. You may not need as many things like the Joneses. So do what's best for you in the college environment. Next slide. So that concludes that part of the program. Does anyone have any questions? Maybe are there questions in the chat that were not able to be answered? if you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi, Tracy. I've got one here that's on the chat, and it
Okay.
says, I have a diagnosis and documentation of psychological testing, but since I attend a private school, I don't have a 504. My school has their own version of an accommodations plan. Will this be accepted, or do I need to get a 504 from the public school system?
Whatever educational institution you attend, whether it's a private school, whether it's public school, whether it's homeschooled, you can use the documentation that has been produced for you in that environment. You do not have to go out and get anything different. You are highly recommended to submit what you have, and then we will work from that information and let you know if it's sufficient or not. So just start with what you have, regardless of what it's called, okay? Other questions?
There was also a question about NOVA's process for scheduling a campus visit. I commented by saying that our campuses are open to the public, so persons are free to visit the campus to do an independent tour. I mentioned that we're in the process of planning NOVA Discover Days or Discover NOVA Days for students to have an opportunity to explore our campuses. But if there's anything else that you'd like to add, maybe that's specific to your campus, that might be helpful.
So I do believe the pandemic, of course, stopped a lot of the in-person tours for safety reasons. So I would just recommend, again, come to campus, walk the halls. The student life department is probably the best place to go to say, hey, I'm new at NOVA, and I'm just wondering, like, what goes on in here? You know, what can I do? Tell me more about what you do. Tell me more about the activities, right? So again, it's really going to be about taking the initiative and just exploring. This is the best time to do it, right? To try and get your footing on where you want to be and where you want to go. So just come on over and walk around and come into student services and ask questions. Other questions? Okay, so it sounds like we are good there. Now we are going to move on to our next portion of the conversation. And we normally have a student panel, which has been wonderful. And unfortunately, we could not staff that student panel in the time that we needed to do it. And so we're going to have a single guest speaker visiting with us. Her name is Miss Elizabeth Tukoyan. Elizabeth, yes, I see you there. So Elizabeth and I are going to have a Q&A session, right? I'm going to ask her some questions. She's going to share her experiences, and we welcome students to post questions in the chat or well, in the chat, post some questions. And if we cover it, great. If not, we can cover it, you know, as we go along. So just a short introduction about Elizabeth. She actually attended the Alexandria campus, and we worked together while she was obtaining her associate's degree, which she got in general studies. And then she went on to UVA, where she got a bachelor's degree. And Elizabeth, as you can see, I think is quite polished and quite, and you know, she went through the NOVA experience, and I think she has some great information to share with students who have questions about this whole process. Okay, so thank you, Elizabeth, for being here. You want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the session and looking forward to all questions.
Absolutely. So Elizabeth, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, so I started my journey at NOVA Community College. I was between the Annandale and Alexandria campus, and I started off with general studies. I didn't end up using accommodations in high school, but when I started off in college, I had a severe medical need, and that is why I needed to seek out accommodations. And so my process was I had medical documentation from my doctors. that indicated why I needed to seek disability services. And it actually took me 4 years to finish my general studies degree, and I dropped out 3 times like with it while a student, and the 3 times I did drop out were for medical withdrawal reasons. But but when I was on campus, NOVA was nothing short of helpful, both going to school and having to get treatment. I was going from treatment centers to classes to take exams. And each step of the way, I had the disability service offices helping out. They're having discussions with my professors. You don't have to explain in detail what your condition is. Disability services will have those conversations for you. But I eventually graduated in 2017. And then I transferred to UVA, in which I did also use disability services at UVA. And I graduated within 2 years. I got a degree in social innovation and entrepreneurship. And while a student at UVA, I founded a company called Help. And it's a patient network where we connect people with the same health conditions, same disabilities. So if you're wanting to connect with other people going through the same health issues, you can join our platform to make those connections. And that's currently what I'm doing today. I'm the founder and CEO of that company. And I've been growing that company ever since a student at UVA.
Wonderful. So you said a couple of things, Elizabeth. You talked about taking the 4 years, and that sort of reinforces the point I made about you don't have to complete NOVA in 2 years, right? So just go at your pace and what your diagnosis allows you to do. So can you tell us why you chose NOVA and what other options you had?
Yeah, so the reason why I chose NOVA was while I was in high school, I was undergoing a very severe I was misdiagnosed all throughout high school. And by the time I got my diagnosis, it was too late. I was looking at schools like Hopkins, Harvard, UVA, but then I had a condition that led to severe memory loss. I didn't know what it was at the time. And so I was really pushing the deadlines, and I thought there's no way I can get into a school like the ones I aspire to get into. So I decided to start at NOVA. And I was, to be completely honest with you, very devastated starting at NOVA. I went to a private school where most people were heading off to a 4-year school. And I know that you all realize there's a stigma around community college. That's also something that I was living with before starting at community college. But it was the best decision I've ever made in my life. If you're even questioning starting at community college, please don't. Not only did I save a lot of money, I was able to basically start all over. I got a 4.0 GPA by the time I graduated. And by the time I transferred to UVA, I was able to try out all different career paths and different interests I had at NOVA. And I figured out exactly what I wanted to do when I transferred. So I didn't waste any time doing a major that I didn't really like. And so I had internship offers from the NIH, from the Armenian Embassy, I started the NOVA Model United Nations. I had so many opportunities. Our community college went and competed at schools like Harvard. We went to schools like William and Mary to compete amongst other universities. And I truly am thankful for what NOVA afforded me. But to be honest, I didn't know at the time what I was getting into, and I was really ashamed. But looking back, everyone's like, oh, you're so lucky you saved so much money. I wish I did that, because a lot of people are in a financial pickle for choosing the schools they did. But I ended up not having that situation.
Yeah. So again, saving the money was a great thing, but you also found NOVA to be as academically rigorous as some of the 4-year schools, correct?
Oh, yes, most definitely. NOVA prepared me for the rigor of UVA. I actually found UVA to be far easier than I did find NOVA, surprisingly.
Yeah, that's saying something.
So, and I was also a part of the NOVA Honors College. So there's a lot of opportunities to be competitive as a student, also seeking out disability services. And you're still able to compete amongst students that are in those honors classes and then end up at places like UVA. And I graduated UVA high honors. I got inducted to the highest honor society. It just speaks to volumes that I was prepared. I was really scared to start at UVA. I thought I was going to not be prepared for the rigor. I know we all hear different things about community college, but NOVA completely prepared me for the rigor for UVA.
Now put yourself back into the shoes of our student guests here. So you're about to graduate and you are looking at different schools. So what did you do to help yourself make a successful transition from high school to college?
Yeah, so I really recommend, if you haven't done so, reach out to people that are in similar, a similar career path or similar, like they studied what you aspire to study, and ask them for advice. Like, did you enjoy the studies? What kind of career paths are there? And prepare yourself for that, because I think people don't realize the long term, like what they want to do at the end of the schooling period. Like, what careers do you want out of this? And so I would go in with a game plan, and it will also help you figure out what classes to take, what schools you want to transfer to, and where you should be looking to transfer. So talk to people, try to find a mentor, even as a high school student, try to find a mentor, like a recent grad, someone that is in a, like maybe a step or two ahead of you, and ask them for advice. Like, what did you do? What classes did you take? And have them guide you through that process. Like, all of us that got somewhere in life had someone help us out. So don't be ashamed to seek people out for support.
Yeah, that's great advice, Elizabeth. Did you visit the campus before you came?
So I always drove by the campus, but I never formally visited. I was determined to start at community college. I read a lot about it, but I never visited before applying to school.
You said something else too. You said you drove by it. So the Alexandria campus, I think, is probably one of the most accessible campuses, right? Because you can take public transportation. It drops you off right in front of the library in the building. And there is student parking. Now you're going to have to buy a parking pass, but it's cheaper if you do it online. Hint. So now, Elizabeth, if you had the chance, what would you do differently in high school to prepare yourself for college, if anything?
I wouldn't have stressed out so much about, like, if some of you are wanting to start at a 4-year school, I was so stressed out to the point where I had a lot of anxiety going into all my exams, everything I needed to make sure to be perfect to get into certain schools. I wish I realized that community college is an amazing first step, not only to save money, but also it's an amazing place to figure out what you want to do career-wise and figure out what you want to study when you do transfer. So I wish I didn't stress out so much. And I wish I spent most of that time exploring what I actually want to do career-wise, instead of worrying about what school I'm going to get accepted to.
Okay. And so now you're at NOVA, and you have your accommodations. Now, can you talk about what advocating for yourself was like? What did you need to do? What was that like for you?
Yeah. So you're not legally obligated to tell any of your professors about your condition. So if you give a memorandum to your professors, it's understood that they have to, by law, they have to abide by that. But your professors are human. They're willing to help you out. Even though you don't have to do this, I really recommend doing this if you feel comfortable, just explaining to them the situation and what you really need support with. Like, at the start of all my classes, I would go to my professors and explain to them that I'm undergoing like a severe health battle and I'm going to treatment like every few days. There's times where I'm going to be able to perform really well, and there's times I'm not going to be able to do so. And so just allowing them to understand the human side of what's behind the paper, it helped me a lot, because there are times where I would explain to my professors that I'm going through a health battle, but I never ended up seeking accommodations. But there were times where I needed to seek it out a few times, but they were already prepared because I had that conversation. You don't have to have that conversation, explain in detail what your needs are, but it does really help. And I really recommend saying something, just so they can help you out a lot more, because they're humans. They're willing to help you out. if you are if you are open about some of the needs that you have. You'd be surprised at who wants to help you.
And that's great advice, Elizabeth. I teach SDV, and I am always of the mind that if you've come to me, if I know a little bit more about you, that's always going to be helpful to the student, right? And like she said, we are human, right? We want to know that you're okay. You know, if you suddenly drop out of sight for class, we're going to send you some emails and say, hey, where are you? What's going on? You're not doing so well, you know? So there is that level of support and interest in the students, and developing them, and also having them get the information from the different classes that they need. Okay. Did you have any particular interactions with faculty that stand out in your mind, whether positive or negative, that became positive?
Yeah, so in a time of need, the disability services have always been there for me. I think you've also been there for me a number of times. You will encounter certain professors that aren't going to be as willing to provide certain accommodations, or they're going to be a little bit more difficult than others. But disability services have always been there to help with having a conversation or explaining like why they need to provide certain accommodations. So like, for example, I was in a science class where someone in my class had a very visible disability. Like, I don't want to go into detail, but it was very obvious she had a physical disability. I didn't. And my professor, he would always downplay what I was going through and in comparison to her. So I had a moment where he would be like, look, I'm being nice by giving the class an hour. It should take you 30 minutes. But then like I would tell him, like, that's not what my memorandum says. Like, whatever you're giving the class, I'm allotted double that time. So he would always compare me to the other person. Like, oh, like she has this and you look fine. But he doesn't realize, like, I need double time. I have other health issues that he can't really see. But disability services have come in and explained our side and have always advocated for me, despite like me trying to support and me trying to advocate for myself. If you're in a position you can't, or you don't know how to advocate properly, someone in disability services can have that conversation for you.
Yeah, and you mentioned a couple of things I just want to follow up on. So again, professors go to school for content, right? They go to become experts in science, experts in math. And to my knowledge, there are really no classes that teach them how to work with students with disabilities, which is a shame. And perhaps graduate schools need to think about that. But so that is why we, as the accommodations counselors, do the training that we do, right? Because professors don't always get it. And in my time at NOVA, I have found that I can count on one hand in my 10 years, and not even use all my fingers, the most difficult professors that I had to interact with and to advocate on behalf of a student, right? So sometimes, you know, some of them, they don't get it, and if they don't get it, you know, we take care of that, and we talk to the people we need to talk to, and we do what we need to do to ensure that the student gets the access that they are allowed by law. And so I definitely, you know, what Elizabeth talked about in terms of the visible versus the invisible disability, you know, it's going to happen. That could happen anywhere on the street, in the store, you know, but it's very important, like she said, to continue to advocate for yourself. Do the best that you can, know that you need that, make it known that you need that, and contact your counselor when you can't get through to them. Absolutely. So Elizabeth, how would you describe the Alexandria campus?
I found it to be the easiest to get around. It was literally one building and it was just a few floors. And whereas the other campuses, they all had like different buildings and you have to go from building to building. But I found, yeah, it's a big building, but I love that you never had to leave the building. So it was amazing for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And did you use any other support services like tutoring or anything like that?
Oh, I was always in the tutoring center, for the writing center, math tutors. I would argue that the reason why I did so well is because of the tutoring centers. I really recommend using those sources. They're free for you all.
Yes, everything is free. You've already paid for the student resources. So, did you have a job or anything or any sort of personal family responsibilities that you had to deal with while you were a student at NOVA? And how did you balance all that?
Yeah, so I did have a job for one of the semesters, and then I got to a point where I was very sick, so I wasn't able to do both the job and also school. So I had to focus all my efforts on school, and there were times where I took a lighter load of classes for 1 or 2 semesters because of how sick I was. But I was able to finish school. But that was just my situation was I was very sick when I started at community college, which is why I couldn't have a full-time job while going to school.
Hmm. And it just definitely speaks to, knowing what your limitations are, right? I recommend first semester. I've seen lots of students who are seeking accommodations and they come in and they're registered for 16 credits. And maybe that works for some students, but it doesn't work for everyone. Okay. So don't push yourself too hard. Figure out the pace first, right? Figure out what you can handle before you dive in too deep. So, what advice, Elizabeth, would you give to new students? These they're here tonight to kind of figure out, what they're supposed to do, how they're going to do this. What advice would you give them?
I would, for always in life, you are your biggest advocate. No one can say, no one understands exactly what you're going through, and no one will be able to understand the full scope. So you have to speak up at times where you feel uncomfortable or you feel like you're misunderstood. No one can understand exactly what you're going through unless you're speaking up for yourself. So I really recommend always trying to find ways to advocate for yourself, even in times where you feel very uncomfortable doing so. But in addition, I really recommend this to everyone about to start school. It will save you so much time and so much money. I know some of us have passions like history or English, but really try to understand what jobs you want to get into post graduation and create a game plan on how you can get to that job. Because some people spend years studying a subject matter that doesn't end up resulting in the career that they wanted or the salaries that they want. And I think a lot of people have that realization too late in the college career journey. So I would really look through what kind of salaries you want, lifestyle you want, also what you're really good at and what you want to develop skills in, and see if that's potentially going to be employable, and try to create a game plan on how you can get to that point. Because if you don't do that and it's too late, you're going to have to spend a few more years getting another degree, or realize by the time you're applying to certain jobs that no one really wants to hire you because you don't have the appropriate skill set. So really think through jobs that you want and then make a game plan on what you want to study. Maybe if you're passionate about English, make it a minor instead of your major. If there's a certain career path that you want to get into, that, like, say you want to get into data science or you want to get into consulting and they're really wanting people with a data analytics background, you might want to major in that and then minor in something that's more of a passion.
So just to be clear, the majors and the minors come into the four-year schools. So yeah, at NOVA, once again, you can get a 2-year degree in biology or math or computer science or graphic design, things like that. Okay. But Elizabeth brings up a good point in that one thing that we say at NOVA as soon as students walk in the door is begin with the end in mind. That is the motto of our career services department. You want to be out there making however amount of money in a field that you're interested in. walk yourself backward to, okay, I'm at NOVA. How do I get there? And that planning process is so very important. And again, there are individuals who can help you with that. Is there any last words that you would like to offer to our attendees, Elizabeth?
Yeah, and if anyone in the audience is contemplating certain career paths, doesn't know exactly what to do, I wouldn't be afraid to take a few classes in a number of fields, take up internship opportunities in some of your interests, and try to the more things that you do that you don't like, it'll get you closer to the things that you like. So try to figure that out as soon as possible. Maybe you thought you were passionate about medicine, and then you do one internship and you realize, wow, I did not like this field, and it'll get you closer to what you want to do. So explore a lot. And don't be afraid to ask for help and for mentorship from people that are a few steps ahead of you. Everyone that's gotten to the top has had support or someone to help them get to that point. So if you are ambitious and want to make something of your life and want to go to the next level, don't be afraid to put yourself out there and get the mentorship and get the guidance from someone that you aspire to be like one day.
Wonderful. Such great advice. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. This has been informative. I hope that students have taken away something. If someone wants to contact you in the future, would you be open to that?
100%. Feel free to message me on LinkedIn. I'm going to include some links. My LinkedIn, I'm going to include my email, and then I'll also include a link to our website. If you want to download our platform and you want to join and be a part of a community, feel free to do that. But I'm going to include all the links here, and feel free to get in touch with me at any time. I'm happy to help.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So yeah, I thank you so much, Elizabeth. I'm so glad you were able to come and share with us. Feel free to stay on while we continue the program. So does anyone have any questions, or are there questions in the chat that relate to what Elizabeth has shared about her story that we can answer? All my chat monitors out there? Or does someone have a question where they want to unmute themselves? We have a shy audience today. Okay, so I'm looking at the chat, and there are a couple of questions that I wanted to address. Let's see, I saw something in here about documentation. Again, use what you have. We do not need you to go out and get any costly evaluations. We will take what you have and give you feedback on that so that we can get you started in the process. Are there any other questions in the chat that I may have missed that weren't answered? Okay, so now parents, I'm not sure how many parents are on the line, but we're going to open up the floor, the microphone, to parents to see if you have any questions. Feel free to unmute yourself. Oh dear. Okay, so we've given you so much information in such a clear fashion, and we've covered everything that you want to know. Does anyone have any questions at all? We still have time. I saw a question in the chat about dual enrollment. So if we have some dual enrollment students on the line, yes, you still have to go through the accommodations process. So if you are typically a rising junior or senior, and you're taking dual enrolled classes and you're taking them for college credit, that is the key, okay? You even though you have accommodations in the high school with your IEP 504 plan, you still have to apply to our department to receive accommodations for the college credit portion of those classes, right? And so it could amount to you having different accommodations for the same class, but you still need to go through the process, right? So apply online, upload your documentation. We'll reach out to you to have a conversation, and then you can get your accommodations for the class. And yes, then you would give the document to that teacher in the classroom who is teaching you that class for both high school and college credit. Okay. Let's see. Anything else in the chat? All right. So Elizabeth, you're getting some great feedback from the students and sharing your story. So that's wonderful.
I have a
Ms. Bell?
question.
Oh, go ahead.
Hi.
Go ahead, Deirdre. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, for the high school dual enrollment students, a lot of times the classes aren't officially put onto their NOVA record until later in August, once APS in our case and NOVA will actually reconcile the rosters. The students can still apply for accommodations earlier than that, though. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, typically when students apply, they have to be enrolled in at least one class, and that class needs to show up in SIS, our student information system. And so that's how we know that, you know, they're in class. Okay, they're going to actually take the class. We're going to have the meeting and they can get their accommodations. We do recognize that the dual enrolled students, you guys have a different system. And so we often don't see those classes in SIS. It's okay for them to apply, absolutely. And sometimes we get calls, you know, from the dual enrolled students who say, oh, I don't have my accommodations yet, but I'm definitely doing dual enrollment, right? We may verify that with the counselor. I can't imagine somebody's applying for dual enrollment and not doing dual enrollment, you know, that would be weird. So yeah, so they can still apply. We will process their applications, and either through you, Ms. Magro, because I've often emailed you, or you've confirmed that students are taking dual enrollment classes, so that we can go ahead and process their application and get them an MOA as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
Yes.
My son is very interested in applying to a military academy and knew that he was not going to put forward a strong enough application this year. Do the counseling services, are there counseling services within the student services at NOVA that can help him plot that path forward toward his goal, which is not just finishing up at a four-year school, but essentially restarting at a four-year school? Because they require all 4 years to be taken.
Meaning that he's going to start at NOVA for 2 years and then go to a 4-year and do all 4 years?
Or at least 1 year. He's gonna work at NOVA until he feels as though he's strengthened his application a little better.
Mm-hmm. So the answer is yes. We have advisors, academic advisors, who are responsible for working with the students, you know, when they first come in, to help them get situated in their classes in terms of English and math placement, and to recommend first semester classes for them, right? So typically it's your English and or math, and some other classes, and it's really going to depend on where the student wants to transfer to, right? So again, begin with the end in mind. You know, you're going to need this class and able to go there to do that major, right? And so you really need to be aware of the minimum number of credits that a transfer institution requires you to have, so that you can plan your time at NOVA most efficiently as possible. But we also have transfer counselors at all of the campuses, and you can even access virtual advising from all the campuses too. So our transfer counselors, they put on a lot of programs and they have a lot of information, and there's actually a really great web spot on the NOVA website called the Transfer Hub, which has some amazing information about school visits, about filling out common applications, about campus tours. You know, sometimes NOVA has taken a bus full of students to visit other campuses. And so we have had students who wanted to go on to military school and, you know, do things in the military. And we certainly do have advisors, excuse me, who can help plot that out. Now, that's a more detailed appointment, though. That's not a walk into student services for 15 minutes and have us plan until your dissertation, right? So certainly come in and get the basics, and then the student will be able to make an appointment through one of our systems called Navigate to get a more in-depth conversation with an advisor.
Okay. And do you also have information about the Virginia state school contracts?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the guaranteed admissions agreements.
Right. Can you talk about those a little?
Oh, absolutely. So let me pull up my website as well. So NOVA has several, gosh, dozens of guaranteed admissions agreements, and they're producing more and more every day. So basically, when you attend NOVA and you do certain things, right? You take your English and your math in the first semester, you get certain grades in your classes, you graduate with the associate's degree. There are different requirements for each of the schools, but I am going to share my screen. Okay. So on our website, all you have to do in this box with the magnifying glass, you can pretty much Google anything you want, you'll get some sort of answer. So I basically went in and put in GAA, okay? Guaranteed Admissions Agreements. And so on this page, NOVA has a list of all of the different colleges and universities that students can look for what's called the guaranteed admissions agreement or an articulation agreement. So with guaranteed admissions, you follow all the requirements, you're basically guaranteed admission to that four-year school and you start as a junior, right? But you have to know what the requirements are when you start, okay? And usually students, you know, they say, oh, I want to go GAA to George Mason, but they haven't read the agreement and they don't know what they really need to do. And I'm actually going to pull it up here, okay? So you can see the GAA has the cumulative GPA that you need to have, right? It talks about when you should apply. It talks about, you know, how they're going to handle those outside scores like AP, CLEP, and IB. And then it, you know, talks about how they're going to handle all of the classes that you get, or even repeated classes, because some schools count them in the cumulative GPA and some don't, right? So that's why it's really important to know what the agreement lays out. So again, you must earn the degree from NOVA. You have to apply by a deadline, right? You have to have a certain GPA. You have to earn, you know, or earn a minimum of 30 transferable credits. And again, A, Bs, and Cs are the only grades that transfer. The Ds are a passing grade at NOVA, but they do not transfer for classes to a four-year institution, okay? So on and so forth. And you can see all of the different requirements in the degree that students need to follow. And when we have articulation agreements, they're very similar to the guaranteed admissions agreements. And again, students should follow those so that they know exactly what they're doing. Well, look at that, military friendly. So again, it looks like we have oh, these are for our student veterans, right? So even have it laid out so those veterans can figure out what schools are going to work best with them and what their career path is. Yes. So definitely review on the website what the agreements say and how you need to go about fulfilling them so that you transfer. Now, let me say one thing in addition to that, though. Everybody wants to go GAA to a four-year school, but there's no shame in getting admitted as a general student, right? If you get in and that's the school you wanted to go to, great, you got in. You can still, take advantage of the school and do whatever it is you wanted to do while you were there. You just don't get those added benefits of maybe starting at the junior level, right? So apply for it if you think you're going to do it, but meet the requirements of the degree. And if you miss one and you still get in, it's okay. That was a lot. Did it answer your question? Other questions from parents and or students? Anyone? Dead air is not.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I think on the chat, it was saying that you need to resubmit your documentation for each semester. So you need to keep doing that, even though, like, I guess by the time, our student is graduating, that's going to be their last IEP they will ever have. So whatever their last IEP is, through the college years, we're just going to submit the same IEP, right? Is that okay?
That is okay. The thing that you need to do every semester is to renew our MOA. It is not to submit the same documentation. So when you originally submit the documentation, we're going to use that to determine the appropriate accommodations. And unless something changes, they will have the same accommodations for the entire time they are at NOVA. And when but be aware though, when they transfer to the four-year school, that school may have different documentation guidelines and or a different process to get accommodations. So it's always a good idea to know what that is, because you're eventually going to go there, but the students do not have to submit documentation every semester. They simply have to go into our system to renew their accommodation letter.
And well, most four-year colleges, like as opposed to somebody coming in, for as a freshman at a four-year institution, all they would have would be their last high school IEP. If you're coming in, after 2 years at a community college, are the four-year colleges going to want newer documentation, or will they generally take the high school IEP or just take the MOAs from NOVA?
It depends on the institution. Everybody does it differently, right? Every institution has the right to establish their own policies as it relates to how they receive students with accommodations and how they're going to interpret their documentation. So if you're worried, I would contact them. They have a disability services office and they're probably going to tell you something similar to what we say. It's not necessarily the age of the documentation, it's the diagnosis, right? And how it affects the student. And they don't outgrow diagnoses, right? So if you have a learning disability when you're 5, yes, you may learn to do some things differently to compensate, and you get retested when you're, 12, right? If you have that documentation plus a current IEP, we have a lot of information to work from, right? Because we have a current level of functioning and we have, historical difficulties that really aren't going to go away, right? So that's why we say just submit as much information as you have, and then we'll start there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions? Any new questions in the chat that we want to bring to the larger group? Okay, we're going to end early if no one has any questions. Okay, so a couple of things as a final part of the program. And if we could go back to the presentation.
Tracy, I will be with you. Just one moment.
Okay, no worries. So we're going to be, just as a preview, we will have a feedback survey that we would like everyone to complete so we can get an idea of what you thought of the program, right? So we always want to do what we can to make it better. And we'll put it in the chat. And if you don't get a chance to, we probably will email it to all the attendees anyway, okay? So if you want to hit, oh, let's see if I can do it. No, I can't. So the next slide, if we want to go to the next slide. Next slide. Announcements, here we go. One more slide. Okay, so Vision is our annual conference where, you know, we invite local students from local high schools who are receiving these special education services, typically from APS schools. Well, we also have designed what we're calling a new student orientation for high school students, even dual enroll students who want to learn more about this process, right? It's pretty much going to be similar to the information that we've shared. It's the same information, right? With the disclaimer that I should have mentioned at the beginning, it is the information that we have right now about our process, but it could be subject to change. And so you always want to go to our website to make sure that you have the most up-to-date information, or you want to email, contact our office through our general email box, okay? So this Accommodations and Accessibility Services virtual new student orientation, there was a session last night. So we have sessions designed for Tuesday and Wednesdays, and you can see the different dates and times there. Again, we're going to talk about what it means to be a student with accommodations at NOVA. What is that process like? You know, what about the self-advocacy? You know, what are the resources? What do I need to do? What do I need to understand about the transition process, right? So we have that handy dandy QR code there. If you want to go ahead and register, you can register in advance for even sessions in July and August. And they're only an hour, lots of time to ask questions. And so we hope that if you still have questions, or you know someone who wasn't able to come tonight, then feel free to share this information. I believe the presentation will be posted on your information dissemination platforms at the schools, so you'll be able to access this flyer in the future. And were we able to put the evaluation, the link to the evaluation, in the chat?
Yes, that should be in there. Just want to make sure that everybody can actually access it. It is in the chat also with the slide. So
Okay.
if they just go to the page that you're on, they'll be able to get the QR code too.
Great,
And I'll
thank you.
also embed some resources from the PRC.
Okay, thank you. And so the other list of resources that was provided to APS is a list of resources to links on the NOVA website. Things like, you know, the financial aid page, the virtual advising, the advising page, the tutoring page, you know, the student life page where students can find out about clubs and organizations. So we want you to be able to go and look at that information and learn as much as you can before you come to NOVA. Because again, you want to be more informed about what you're walking into so that it's not culture shock once you get to us. And I believe there is maybe one more slide, but I think that's the end. Next slide. Thank you for attending. So we will be here for a few minutes if anyone still has burning questions that they want to get answered. But if not, I want to thank you so much for attending. We really hope that we have provided information to you that is useful and that students will act on, and hopefully make their transition easier to NOVA, or again, whatever college you're going to go to, because it's still going to be the same transition process, and the students still will have to seek out accommodations at that disability services office. So thank you, everyone. It was great for you to come, and like I said, we'll hang out until if someone has a question. What is the link? Where is the link to evaluation? Maybe.
It should be the first link, and I can highlight it and put it back in.
Yes.
The most recent.
Yeah, maybe just want to.
Sorry, there's a lot of things in there. Let's see. Let's try that.
So it's going to go back in there, so you can click on that and provide your feedback. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. Okay. We are down to 18 individuals. Does anyone have any last minute questions? Based on the feedback, it looks like this has been a helpful session for many individuals, which is wonderful. That's exactly what we want to hear. I'm just scrolling through the chat to see what other. Yes.
I'm just gonna add, it seems like the link for some reason it's not coming through because I don't see it on my end either. So I'm presuming that you guys are gonna send it out anyways. So if you don't happen to see the link in the chat for whatever reason, I'm not sure what's happening. You'll still receive that information as part of the follow-up from today's conference.
Great. Yes, yes, yes.
I will try it one more time.
So we're going to try that one more time, and you can feel free to click on it. I see we still have 16 individuals. Maybe they're waiting for the evaluation link. You are all very welcome. There we go. Now we have our evaluation link. Feel free to click on that, and free to enjoy the rest of your evening. So we'll give just a few minutes for everyone to access that, and then we are going to sign out for the night. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate your attendance. Okay. So I think that's going to be it. Once again, for those of you who are still on the line, we definitely will be emailing the link out, and hopefully you got all of your questions answered. So everyone have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Oh, yes. Did
Good
someone...
night. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Hey. Okay, Tracy, shall I end the meeting?
Yeah, what happens? Oh, when I
Okay.
send this in the chat, what happens? This is from the PRC's link. Oh, maybe I can't access it anymore.
I'm not sure, but I put it in there. So, and I'll go ahead and send out the presentation slides and the request for the evaluation to everybody who registered. Okay.
Yeah, it's
and then we can
showing up,
post the
Patricia.
recording too.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe some people can't. I don't know why, but okay. But thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, it
Kathleen
went really
and
well.
Tracy.
Maybe we
and
should just have
Deirdre.
a debrief soon.
Yeah.
And just see if there's, I mean, I think it went great. Tracy, I loved having the conversation, you know, with your former
Elizabeth?
student. I think that was a really, I thought it just really was a great way to convey the information and great opportunity for them to hear from her. So,
well, thank you. I'm glad it went off well, because
yeah, I think it was really wonderful.
Did that. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I think.
Okay, everybody.
We struck gold with her. Yeah.
All right.
Okay,
We'll
everyone.
talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a great night, guys. Thank you.
Bye, Patricia. Bye.
Bye. Good night.